It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Welcome to County-Wide. I'm Paul David. Great to have you in studio once again with us today. Don Muse from the Coconino National Forest. He's the Fire and Aviation Staff Officer. Don, you were here last year. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And we had Pete Gordon, I told you, in earlier, well, last month he came in. Denny Folk from Emergency Services. We've talked to several firefighters, and we're kind of just really plugging along with the wildfire season and defensible space, and get your properties cleaned up and be prepared for the wildfire season, which is already well underway.
That's true.
And so I'm so glad you could come down, because I know you were here last year. You did such a great job of kind of telling us how things were going on the Coconino National Forest. And I kind of feel like Prescott National Forest, Cocoa Forest, Kaibab, and Tonto are pretty popular forests with the folks in central and northern Arizona.
Very much so.
Yeah, so give us a kind of rundown. Where's the Coconino National Forest at this time of year? Because I know we're a month early in terms of what our wildfire season.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. You know, we didn't get much snowpack. Most of our storms came before December, actually, before Christmas.
Correct.
And then we got some moisture after that, but, you know, in many cases, we were 50% snowpack throughout the northern part of Arizona and into the peaks. And as a result, we are, as you mentioned, about a month ahead of where we were last year. But more importantly is that our indicators show us that we're near record in terms of the dryness of the fuels that are out there and the conditions that are out there that are receptive to fire.
What does it mean near record?
So we track stuff over many, many years, and we have these indices that we use to kind of to help us gauge where we are in an average fire year. So we look at average, we look at extremes, and then we look at basically where normally we would be this time of year. And those indicators have to do with fuels in the forest and those fuels that are receptive. They can be the large fuels like the down woody fuels, or they can be the drier fuels like the grasses and the needles. But as we look at those indices, it helps us gauge where we are so that we're not just making an emotional decision to for instance, throw in restrictions.
Right.
It's kind of science-based. It has to do with some of the emotional side, but mostly it's science-based, so that we don't pull the trigger too early, because we are taking away some of the privileges that folks have. But we want to make sure that we're kind of in sync with looking at, let's say, over a 20-year period. So this year, all along through the spring, starting in April, we were bumping up against those extreme, which means that the highest they've been. And so that just is a good indicator for us that we're very dry for the time of year. And so looking at April, for instance, generally in April we're still fairly wet. But this year that was not the case, and because of the lack of the snowpack and the lack of moisture and storms that came in or coming in, we were very dry. And the really good indicator for us was we had a fire in April called the Fisher Fire that it got started, ran up a slope, and continued to burn fairly hard for that time of year. It was spotting out ahead of the main front of the fire, which we usually don't see in April, and we had flaming fronts on that fire into 1 o'clock in the morning. So, and that's very unusual for that time of year.
It should start to lay down once the sun starts to go down.
Generally that's the case. The humidities go up at night in April generally, and that wasn't the case. So we were fortunate that we got out ahead of that fire and were able to get around it. We had enough resources.
Did that surprise you, or were you guys kind of anticipating that due to the fact that we did? I think we had less than 50% of what we normally would have during our winter months. We
knew it was dry, and we knew that we were going into our fire season early. We didn't expect that the fire activity would be that active. We thought, because it was still cool at night, one of those things that happens is if you get an ignition, generally we can catch it that evening. It doesn't give us a lot of problems, and by the morning it's over with. That wasn't the case on this fire. The fuels were very dry, and so, as I said, the activity was more severe than we had thought it would be at that time of year.
Pete Gordon had mentioned when he was in here last month for the Prescott National Forest that the Secret Fire in the Secret Mountain Wilderness area there at the top of the switchbacks and off to the west, he had mentioned that they were seeing the big fuels, the logs that are normally sitting under you know, all that snowpack.
Right.
He was talking about how normally something like that would burn down and you'd have remnants of it, but that they are actually burning all the way down to white ash.
Right. So the Secret Fire was a human fire in early April. Right. And human-caused fire in early April, and we were experiencing fire behavior then that was very rare for early April. And as Pete was mentioning, we look at our fuels, we look at 1 hour fuels, which are like the really small stuff, the grasses and the needles, 10 hour fuels, which are kind of twigs, and then branches are the 100 hour fuels, and then we call the big logs out there 1,000 hour fuels. And Pete's right, those logs were burning down to white ash in the 1st of April. Generally, those logs will retain moisture that they gained over the winter, and will not do that time of year. Usually that's stuff we see in like June here. So
how we had a fire break out yesterday afternoon, the Hearst fire up in the Kaibab National Forest. We've got a handle on that one, and that's taken care of.
Yep, they got around that. I think it was in about an acre.
Thank goodness.
Yes, right. That was in fairly light fuels, and they were able to jump on it quickly. Certainly, our resources are ready to respond and respond quickly, and so they got on that quickly. We supported the Kaibab with, once their engines went out, we sent an engine over there to protect against another fire, but fortunately they were able to get on that quickly with their engines and get around it.
You'll have to be on like springboards right now.
Well, that's
right, especially like on the weekends.
You know, this is something we live with every year.
Right.
So, you know, there's a lot of calmness in some of these young folks that are firefighters. I mean, they look, because they deal with this regularly, but I want folks to understand that we're as prepared as we can be given the resources that we're allowed. And as things progress further and further, we have the ability to ask for severity resources also, either money to extend the days and the hours that our folks work, or to bring in extra resources. So as things progress and the season progresses, we continue to supplement our resources with folks from outside, and by extending our resources out so that we've got good coverage through the day.
All right. Maybe we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the resources that are available for the year, okay? Don Muse with the Coconino National Forest is here today. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be right back.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
One of the areas still maturing in an adolescent brain is the prefrontal cortex. So when we take drugs, we alter key motivational circuits, changing the wiring needed for the cognitive function of the brain, until we can't totally deal with things like memory, thinking things out, and even learning stuff.
The signs are there. So is our help. Visit the partnership at drugfree.org for practical advice on coping with teen drug use.
When you're out there, there's no telling what you'll find.
I see it! I see it! Oh, look at you.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm Paul David. Great to have you along with us. Don Muse from the Coconino National Forest. He's the Fire and Aviation Staff Officer there, and we're talking about the wildfire season on the Coconino National Forest side of it. I don't know that there is really a big difference. I mean, southern Arizona, Sierra Vista area, they've had multiple wildfires, and I know you guys have had a few up on the Coco. Prescott's had maybe one or two. Kaibab's had one. So we haven't had too many, but we've had too many.
Certainly the potential's there.
To basically say that. We've had too many.
Right. And I think here's the kicker for us is that there hasn't been very much lightning this spring, so every one of the fires we've had, and we're up to probably 24 fires for the year, every one of them are human caused, except for one. We had one that was confirmed lightning. So, you know, when you think about that, those are all preventable fires. So.
And things are just going to get more severe now. I mean, we're getting blessed with these little shots. Like today, it's a red flag warning day because we've got these 45-mile-an-hour winds going on, but it's very dry. Now we've got like this 10% chance of showers tonight, a 40% chance through tomorrow, and then temperatures drop from Monday to Wednesday 20 degrees, and then by Friday back up 20 degrees.
Right.
So it's like these little Band-Aids that you guys we're all getting.
And it makes difficult for us because we're trying to do the right thing out there to the public that utilizes and wants to recreate on the national forest land. So we don't want to put too much restriction on them. But on the other hand, those are necessary things to prevent additional fires. You know, we had a storm in Flagstaff 2 weekends ago that dropped 5 or 6 inches of snow there, but by Friday the next week we were back into critical conditions. So you know, it's a fickle time of year. We can get these pulses of moisture, but as we look at and talk to our meteorologists and climatologists, you know, we know that we're going into a continued drying trend at some point. And until the monsoons set up in earnest, we're going to be challenged with a fire
We know
season.
it's just going to get warmer.
That's right.
And
That's
then the
exactly
month of June is always just kind of that hot, dry, still month where the air doesn't move much. And
I usually characterize our fire season as about mid-May till just after the 4th of July. It's about a 50-day period or so that's the challenging time for us, because at that point it gets hot and dry in them, and we've got a lot of folks in the forest. That's one of the challenges we have with Mother's Day coming up and then schools letting out. That just opens the floodgates. There'll be tons and tons of folks in the forest. You know, we're very close to Phoenix. Phoenix is getting to be 100, 110. People want to escape that heat. Right. And our forest is open to them. They can go up there and camp and enjoy themselves, and we welcome that. But it does pose some challenges for us.
Yeah, more possibility for accidents to happen with more and more people in the forest.
Right.
Now, we were going to come back and talk resources. Let's do that. What does the Coconino National Forest have resource-wise for this wildfire season this year?
Sure. We have, you know, we have 3 hotshot crews on the Coconino National Forest, Blue Ridge, Mormon Lake, and Flagstaff hotshot crews, which are a great resource for us to have, but their job is to go somewhere else if there's a fire somewhere else, and so they move around a lot. So what we will do is supplement them with bringing outside crews. But right now the Coconino's staffing up 12 fire engines of different sizes. We have a very robust prevention and patrol program where we go out and make contacts with all the folks that are in the forest. And then we have a very good detection system. Although it seems a little old and archaic, we staff 8 lookout towers every year, and that's for us to get as quick a response as we can to a fire, because obviously the quicker we respond, the better it is.
Well, the Eldon Lookout Tower was staffed just a day before a fire broke out.
Right. We brought, knowing that our conditions were tough, we brought a couple of the lookouts in about a month early than we normally do. You know, our season can be long based on the lightning season during the monsoons, and then hunting season is a challenge for us sometimes. And so we're limited at how long we can keep people on. They're seasonal employees, but so we try to stretch that out as best we can. But knowing that we had conditions, we put folks in some of our key lookouts, and fortunately, they detected a fire the next day. The next day,
very
they
timely.
were up there. Yes, very timely.
Very timely.
Yep.
Do we have air support that's actually stationed nearby?
Right.
And if not, how long does it take to get here?
Right. So on the Coconino National Forest, we don't have a standard Air Force. The Prescott National Forest has a helicopter, a light helicopter, as does the Tonto National Forest in Payson.
With the buckets?
Right.
Okay.
With a small helicopters. And then there's also one over on the Kaibab in the Williams Ranger District. So, and the Grand Canyon has 2 helicopters. So we are able to tap those if we need them. What we staff at the Flagstaff Airport is an air attack platform, which is a fixed-wing aircraft, a 2-engine aircraft with an ATGS, which is basically an air tactical group supervisor. And their job is to get up in the air as quick as possible. They basically are at the airport all day long waiting for a call. And then if there is a start, or if we think that there may be something going on, we'll get them up in the air so that they can have good eyes on it, can control the airspace over that fire, but also help our folks get to that fire. So that'll be there through our critical fire season. It's a combined aircraft that we share with the Kaibab and the Grand Canyon National Park through an agreement. And we staff it and we host it there at Flagstaff, and their job is to get up in the air quickly so that if a tower sees a fire, for instance, they'll get up and give us a good assessment to tell us what they think we probably need to get this fire and put it out.
So it's kind of a guidance plane. It'll guide you, tell you which way the fire's spreading and
right.
all that.
And then the other critical thing for them is they control the airspace. So if we do have helicopters come in and air tankers and all those other things that are part of our resources, they manage that airspace so that we can be as safe as possible with that stuff going on.
With the lack of moisture we had over the winter, this just kind of occurred to me, what's the water supply look like up in that area? Because I haven't seen Lake Murray in probably a couple of years now, but they've all got to be pretty low.
Yeah, I don't think Lake Murray went up to its maximum by any means this year. And you know, the little pulses of moisture we've got, the snow we got melted off quickly, but loaded Lake Murray pretty well. There are tanks that are scattered around the forest, the stock tanks and stuff like that, are probably 2/3 to 3/4 full, but that doesn't last very long. Once the warm weathers come in, they pretty much evaporate out pretty quickly. So it's a challenge for us as firefighters because we do need water and we need those water sources. So we'll be tapping. We're looking at some options. We typically will put a heli-tank there at Slide Rock State Park, for instance, and have that full. We've got a couple of spots up in Flagstaff that will do the same thing, so that if we need a source to dip out of, we'll do that. And in the worst case scenario, we'll go to golf courses and stuff like that and ask for permission, but generally they're pretty good about allowing us to use those water sources.
Something else I was just thinking about while you're talking there is we have years where human-caused fires, we always jump on those right away and put those out. But then there's the years where we have some of these lightning spark fires, because there's always that danger zone when the monsoon hits. That first couple of weeks, you don't get a lot of rain. You just get that dry lightning.
Right.
Are we taking the same approach with the lightning spark fires this year as we would with a human-caused fire? Or is it get out there and get on them as quick as possible?
Right now, there's no doubt in our minds that we're going to go full suppression. We're going to suppress those fires. If the monsoons do set up and we get sufficient rain so that the fires we can control the spread of those fires and stuff, then we'll probably look at utilizing those ignitions as a potential for doing some resource benefits. And the resource benefits is, one of them is just fuel reduction alone. If we let a fire go through there, a lot of that fuel is consumed, so that if there is a start that we don't really want or don't feel like we can control, we can get in there and actually make it safer for our firefighters to go in and suppress that fire. There's also other benefits that go. It's a nutrient regeneration, so it makes things grow better and stuff. And then there's also other benefits that are involved. But ultimately, the intent there is to go to a restoration mode, which means that we're going to go back to a time when in those areas where the fuels are lighter, there's fewer trees, and so the risk of a catastrophic wildfire is less.
And we've seen that work out. We've seen that work out in several fires over the last couple of years where the press release says this is actually burning in an area that was treated 2 years ago.
Right.
And so the fire is staying low to the ground. It's not burning up into the canopies of the trees where you don't want it to be. And so it has paid off in years past, of course.
And, our hope is that, you know, if a fire does get established in an area that hasn't been treated, that it will hit an area that we have treated. And if it does, then it gives our firefighters a fighting chance to manage that.
Let's take another break.
Sure.
We're running out of time here. Let's take one more break. Don Mewson, studio today with the Coconino National Forest. Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
Listen now, can you hear the bluebirds? Oh, look up now, can you feel the sun?
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got just about 90 seconds left in the program, and I wanted to ask you on the Coconino National Forest. I know Debbie Maneely's been trying to keep me up to date on the Prescott National Forest as far as abandoned campfires, and
Sure.
There's not been a whole lot of those found lately, at least not since restrictions to Stage 1 went into place. How about on the Coconino?
Well, a little different on the Coke. Over this past weekend, we responded to 10 illegal campfires. So people reported it, or our law enforcement or public information folks were out looking around and found fire. So it still is happening out there. And it also becomes a critical time for us as school. NAU is going to be graduating this week, and then as the other high schools get out, there tends to be a lot of graduation parties out in the forest, and that causes some issues for us. But so people know that, most people know, can see the signs and know that we're in fire restrictions, but they either choose to ignore it or just don't pay attention to what's going on.
Are we educating them or ticketing them?
Well, we're doing both.
Doing both?
Yes,
okay.
Right. Yeah, there are some folks that don't know. For the most part, we're ticketing because if it's very obvious that they drove past a huge sign or a flashing billboard that said no campfires,
Right.
and then they choose to have one. So it depends on how they respond to us too when we show up. So for the most part, we're trying to do the education side. Particularly if they're in a fire ring and don't look to be a threat, but they're illegal.
Right.
On the other hand, if there's challenges, then we'll do the appropriate thing.
All right, well, before you go, we had Jackie Banks talking about this from Kaibab. Know before you go, firerestrictions.us. You go there, a big map of Arizona pops up. You can click anywhere you want on it. It tells you if there's fire restrictions or not. Don, great seeing you again. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I imagine we'll probably see you before the summer's out.
I'll be glad to come back.
Great, awesome. That's today's Countywide. I'm Paul David. We will talk to you again next time.